Well, good morning, Facebook land, and good morning, Zoom class. Don't forget to put your camera on so I can see your smiling face, or I will just speak very fast to a blank screen. Yay, Jesse and John. Way to hook a friend up. I knew Jill was coming. I can always count on Jill. But today we're going to go over the listing contract. And before I get started, I wanted to turn some time over to John because John is our Epic financial lender. And, I was listening to my daily news updates today, and they were talking a lot about, and they even brought in the economic forecaster for a national association, Dr. Lawrence Yun, on the podcast, and they were talking about the housing crisis, the housing crash of 07 and compared to today, and the fear factors and the interest rates. And what I loved hearing was the reality is this is not 07, and the other reality is in 07 we had 4 million listings nationally, and right now we have 1 million. So we still have a housing crisis of shortage of inventory, even though it doesn't feel that way at this moment because we're not in a frenzy. We actually have what we would consider a normalized market of negotiations. So John, I was hoping you can help us out, give us some tidbits on what we can be talking to buyers about, how we can help sellers sell, and just take it away, sir. We can't hear you, John. Can you guys hear? No hearing. John, come in my office. Run! John is coming. You should, yeah, here he is. I will move now. You can hear me on there, right?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Awesome. Hey guys, this is John Schrader with Epic Lending. How are you? Where's the camera? Am I looking at that?
Yeah, but you're looking at that.
Okay. Hi. Hey, the thing is, we need to do something about inflation. So if you guys know anybody that can turn that ball around, we need to turn that around. That inflation is really driving everybody crazy. And because of the inflation driving everybody crazy, there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. Right now, the Fed is supposed to meet on November 2nd, and they're still saying they're going to raise it up another 75 basis points. And when I say raise it up, they're talking about that overnight funds rate that directly affects prime. It doesn't directly affect our mortgage rates because that's a different instrument, but it does affect the market. So everybody playing the game is going to raise those rates up a little bit. We're in the high sevens. I hate to say it. And if credit is not so good, we're talking low eights. So anywhere from the mid to high sevens is out there. And that's a part of the conversation these days. It's still super popular to use some seller concessions and see if that helps the borrower with buying down the interest rate a little bit, either on a permanent buy down or a temporary buy down. We've talked about that before, but I'm glad to answer any questions if you ever need them. Just sit tight. We'll see what happens. It's all will cycle through. So stay positive and keep cranking. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. John Schrader, Epic Lending.
Hey, let them ask you questions, John.
Okay, is the microphone on?
Ours is. You can hear. Don't worry. They're just muted.
Okay.
I know you have a question, guys. Ask him a question.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. What, as a lender, would you be able to do for me to support me with my sellers at the listing presentation? I know you're not going to physically be there, but what is something I can talk about with you being on my team when I'm talking to a seller?
Yep, we can give lots of ideas on the seller side. There's lots of different ways to strategically position yourself. For example, is it better to give a $20,000 reduction in sales price, or is it better to give a $20,000 concession? You leave the sales price high, but using that $20,000 helps the buyer, and maybe the seller doesn't want to lower that sales price, and that kind of helps them manage it a little bit better. So that's an example of doing that type of a thing. So there are options out there, absolutely.
And John, would you be willing to look at any pre-approval received by a seller to see if you can help that buyer beat the rate of their current lender and give us?
Mandy is better at this than I am, guys. Okay, so our company is offering a thing called Second Opinion. So as a seller, if you've got a buyer that's coming in and they're presenting you a pre-qual, if you want to, you can bounce that pre-qual by me, see if I can do something a little bit better for them, see if I can help out structure it a little bit differently, or maybe even give them a better rate and a better price. So it just depends on the terms of the transaction, but absolutely, Mandy's right. If you're a listing agent and you've got a pre-qual in your hand from the other side and you're looking at it, I'd be glad to take a second opinion and just throw something out there to see if that works for them. Absolutely. Thanks, Mandy.
Any other questions for John before I release him from my office?
I have a question. Scott Simon.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, John. So I am new, so this might be really easy to answer, and I just don't know. But that $20,000 concession that we may be able to offer, is that something that they can do to buy down the interest rate with?
Absolutely. So those seller concessions are typically, the verbiage that we would put in there is toward closing costs or prepaids. And so we can structure that any way we can. Closing costs, if we're buying down the rate, shows up in the form of points. So we could buy discount points to buy the rate down. We can either do that with a program called a 3-2-1 buy down or a 2-1 buy down. Those are examples of temporary buy downs. Or we can just buy a couple of points and knock it down to, or maybe not a couple of points in today's price points, maybe a point or so. But anyway, depending on the loan amount, and as a quick reminder, 1 point equals 1% of the loan amount. So for example, on a $400,000 loan, 1 point is $4,000. Okay, so 2 points would be $8,000. So you can tell if somebody's coughing up 20 grand, you can do some damage. So we could buy some discount points and affect their interest rate and drop their monthly payment for them. So yes, to answer your question, Scott, you can turn around and use those seller concessions to help buy down the rate. Yes. Good question. Any other questions? Mandy?
Jesse's unmuted.
From the crowd. Jesse, anything going on?
I'm just wondering, are you a lender or a broker?
Ooh, good question. I am working for a company called Epic Lending. We have a joint venture with Realty One Group and CMG Financial. So most of the time I act like a bank. However, if there's something outside the box, like a self-employed borrower who writes off all of his expenses and doesn't show much income, we do act like a broker sometimes, where we can do bank statement programs and recent credit issues and DSCR. We've got a lot of things out there where we act like a broker, but most of the time I act like a bank.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great question. Okay, guys. Hey, that's good. How come nobody's in that box? Oh, that's supposed to be me.
That's
Okay.
supposed to be your head, John.
We're gonna see you guys later. By the way, super kudos to Jill yesterday in our improv class. She was a rock star, and Mandy held her own, let me tell you. But thanks, guys. See ya.
Just because my life is so entertaining.
Ginger snap.
Yeah, that was easy. Well, I'm excited to spend the morning with you. Are you guys ready to rock and roll on that ER agreement? Cool. So Dave's joining us right now and we're going to get started. So Eric Carlene's here. Eric, why don't you unmute and tell us how many years you've been in the business?
9 years, I think, since no more than that. So
I know
yeah.
you feel like I'm aging you when you tell us your years in, don't you?
Oh God, yeah. Since 2009.
13 years, my
13
friend.
years. There you go. That's how long I've been in the business.
Awesome. So Eric's a great one. He's in my office all the time. And if you ever see Eric and you have a question, feel free to pick his brain. He's a very nice person. And I'm offering you out without you doing it. So there you go, Eric.
No problem.
And did you get your listing under contract yesterday?
Yes. Homes are selling, believe it or not. So you just got to do some creative stuff to get them sold and work with your buyers, do creative things as well.
So just to let you all know, on Monday morning in the PV office, you're more than welcome to come, even if you're at one of our sister offices. We will be having a carryback class about seller mentality and abilities to still make more money and use their asset as an investment and have the deed changeover. So there's a lot that goes over with a seller carryback. We're going to be covering that. John is going to give me some tidbits on how he can help that buyer refi for a balloon payment. So really excited about it. And Eric, why don't you help us out there?
Hey, are we ever going to talk about wraps?
Well, we will talk about wraps as well as on Monday, but I'm going to tell you right now, we have a form that's for wraps. That's a disclosure to a buyer and a seller that says, we do not advise you do this. This is dangerous. Bad idea. So a wrap, while we're getting into this, these are other creative techniques that you guys are going to start hearing on the news and in vocab, and people feel like they sound so smart when they're like, oh yeah, so we did a carryback. Oh yeah, we did a wrap. And honestly, I'm just worried. All it does for me is puts alarms up, because if people don't know the ins and outs, we could actually be harming people. Any of you know that clause, due on sale? Right, due on sale means just that. If a bank finds out you're no longer the owner of the property legally, they can call that whole note due and payable immediately. And if someone cannot pay off that note immediately, they can foreclose on the property, and then everybody's out. And so that's what's dangerous about a wrap, because a wrap is we have mortgage A, and mortgage A is not going to get paid off. Okay, but we're gonna do a seller note where the seller changes the deed over and wraps around the money on this note. And they're like, oh, as long as we pay the mortgage on time, they'll never notice. Well, let me ask you, if you were a bank right now and you had a 3% note out there and the market's yielding 7 to 8%, would that $1,000 a month make you want to start investigating who actually owns their homes? If you were the bank? Oh, Eric, don't say no. Absolutely, it would. And so in this new market, you have to worry. They find out, or I'm late on this mortgage and they find out I'm not the deed holder. If they call this all due and payable, everyone loses the house. So there's a lot of risks involved. So we will absolutely go through that, Eric. Go ahead. My engineer.
But then wouldn't the bank say, hey, that's not money we're lending out? We have a lender who's paying versus a whole bunch of people that can't get loans. So why not collect it?
And isn't that the fun thing, is that there's a lot of personality out there. So, right, so you have a 50-50 shot. So Eric and I are great, 50-50 opinion here. And so that just means you're rolling the dice and seeing what happens. So lots of things to think about, guys. So we're gonna dive deep into our fun topic of listing agreements. This is one of my favorite things. Well, I have many favorite things, to be honest with you. But my third favorite item, because my first favorite item for you to memorize is the agency disclosure, understanding your value, knowing how to talk about it. Your second thing you better know by heart on all the concepts is the residential purchase contract. And the third item you need to know ins and outs of is your listing contract. So your exclusive right to sell. How many listing contracts do we have? Standard. 2. You have an EA agreement, which is called your exclusive agency agreement. You hear a lot of this kind of advertising when you listen to Mr. Russell Shaw. I'm applying for a job. If you want to fire me, fire me. If you bring your own buyer, I might not get compensated. If somebody else brings a buyer, I might not be compensated. So you have to be really, really careful with an EA. I do not believe in or utilize them. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just not what I do. When I take a listing and start putting my money out there, my time out there, I do what's called an ER agreement, an exclusive right to sell. And this is the listing agreement we will be going over today. Because when somebody brings a buyer, even if you bring the buyer, I'm still going to be compensated and I am still going to represent the seller. Does that make sense? So I teach to the ER agreement only. If you want to use an EA agreement, please see me one-on-one or your managing broker one-on-one so we can go over the pros and cons with you. But I'm going to need you to read that thoroughly and in depth and highlight the areas in which you want to discuss, because I'm going to expect you to understand that moving forward. And if you don't, you're going to be really upset when you're not paid. So that's kind of how that goes down. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen so that way when I go item to item, you can still see it. And so just give me 1 second here. We'll put you all over yonder. You know, it's really hard to go home to only one computer screen some days now. So the first thing I want to let you know is you need to understand where we're going to get the information for our listing. Okay, so and where we get the documents. So you all have logged into One.Zone, correct? Awesome. On the left-hand sidebar, at a bare minimum, you should have clicked SkySlope by now, so it sets up your form access. Once you click on it again, what you're taken to is actually SkySlope. I am in the form side of SkySlope, and I have already update now. I have already gone ahead and gone into the residential listing contract exclusive right to sell agreement. And this is the one we're going to be after. And again, it says residential listing contract exclusive right to sell. So this is great. This is the form we're going to dive deep into. What I need you to understand, though, is there's more than just this form that you're going to have to do for a listing. You have an agency disclosure of wire fraud, SPDS, and this is not our listing presentation. This is just only today strictly on the listing contract. Cool? So please download the checklist. Make sure you're going through the checklist, which you can find under the working documents on SkySlope. But right now, this is where we're going to focus. So the very first thing we need when filling out an ER agreement is a house. So let's go ahead and dive deep into what that looks like. So everybody is logged into ARMLS by now, correct? If you have not, please shortcut armls.flexmls.com. This URL right here takes you directly to this page. If you just go to armls.com, you have to actually search for your login for Flex. And Flex is where we all always go, okay? The first thing you're going to do always is look up the tax records on a property. So under menu, you would go under and you'd go to taxes and you click Monsoon. I put a star next to Monsoon because I want Monsoon on my actual header bar up top. I recommend you all put a star on Monsoon, or you're going to have to always dig deep, and I don't like digging deep. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Monsoon. Please note, if you have any questions, I expect you to unmute yourself and interrupt me. I'm giving you permission to interrupt me. So please feel free, okay? I know sometimes I just go on a roll and people say back up. So you just let me know if I need to back up. So one of the things is I can't ask any of you for your personal property, and I definitely can't record any of your clients' personal properties on Zoom. That's just wrong. So I'm going to use one of mine. Cool. So I'm going to type in the address for the property. I could also search by the client's name. So when I type in the address, I'm very plain. I'm not putting Lane Avenue. The thing is, when you put too much in a data system, sometimes it doesn't pull the right things. So I just put in the very minimum. So here I am pulling the property we're going to use today. This is what we call our tax records. We're going to gather so much information from the tax records to utilize it on our residential listing. So in here, what you're going to see is here's our APN number up top. We always need to know who the actual owners of the property is or are. So here's a Jacob and Mandy Neat. I'm a very forceful person in my relationship. So when you're making your listing presentation with me, I might be like, yes, I will be there at 3. You may need to ask, oh, is Jacob going to be available as well? Because I'm just like, well, if I say yes, it's a yes. But Jake, he gets to sign too. So we want to make sure that we have all decision makers at the table. And also, just to let you know, even if I am the decision maker and Jake even says to you, I'm just good whatever Mandy says, it's never really that way. And if I have to describe your presentation to Jake, we're going to have an issue because I'm not going to do it as well as you do it. So you want to always make sure the decision makers are at the table. Now, let me ask you a question, Eric. You're going to have to hold off on answering so fast, okay? How many people do you need to sign a listing contract to make it valid? Go ahead, Scott.
Both?
You said both?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have another opinion?
Just one?
No, Scott, I like your, no, I'm going to go with it. You said both. You stay up.
Yeah. Both to sell, 1 to buy, 2 to sell, right?
Yes, 1 to buy, all to sell. You got it, Scott. But if you have everybody's buy-in from the beginning, doesn't it make it an easier process? Right. So when I say, oh, well, he's just busy, he won't be here, I might want to reschedule with me, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the buy-in from both of us, how do you know he really wants to sell? Right. And then we get to the contract, and is the contract valid without Jacob's signature? A purchase contract? No. So you did all this work and all this effort, and boom, No more you can do with it. So you want to be really careful. So Scott, I love that you're like both, because I just want you to keep the mentality. Sometimes I don't care that the law is simplified for this process. I care about how we move the ball forward. So it's really important to understand who owns the property. Also, if this says an LLC, a corporation, or a trust, we want to make sure we ask for those proper documents to make sure the right person is signing. For an LLC, a managing member would be signing. For a corporation, it might be the president. For a trust, it would be the trustor or the trustees. So you always want to be very careful to understand the documentations and how we're to move forward. The next thing you're going to notice is a subdivision. This comes in a lot when we do comparables, but we're going to go ahead and scroll down to where it shows abbreviated legal description. I don't feel as though this is really abbreviated or abridged, so I don't know why they put that there, but we want to use the top legal description because it has the lot number involved. If I put the rest of this in, which it says full legal description, it pulls up the entire subdivision, but the lot number shows the actual property that we're working with. And don't we really want to sell that house? So I'm going to go ahead and split my windows real fast because we're going to go back and forth on the documents. I hope that you can see this clearly, that your screen's going to be big enough for me to split my screen. But without seeing both, what you would usually do is right from the get-go, you would print this out. You're going to print out your tax base because you need this information moving forward. So now we go back to our form. And let me make it bigger. All right, well, my computer doesn't want to cooperate, so I guess we'll just go full board. We'll just skip over in a minute. And the first thing it says is owner and seller. When you click this, it's going to ask for their names and you'll have to add another. So you'll actually be typing their information directly into this. So I would say Jacob Neat and Mandy. And I say save. But now keep in mind, if I go back to my tax records, for the most part, I want it to match. So that actually said Jacob and Mandy L. Neat. So that's always interesting. So I could absolutely add the middle initial. But at the end of the day, as long as you have their first name and their last name correct, you're good to move forward on the listing contract, which is not always the case on a purchase contract. On a purchase contract, you always want to make sure the buyer's name matches exactly with the pre-qualification. Are we all good there? Section 2 here says broker. So that's really simple. That's the name of the brokerage. And then on line 4 is your name. And let's say you're co-listing this or you're on a team, the other name would go here. If you're a mentor or a mentee, typically your managing broker would go here. Everybody good there? So we added that extra agent name. I would like to go back to something that's debated a lot. Who does this listing truly belong to?
Brokerage.
And who is the designated broker?
Ron Corpus.
Yes, Scott. Thank you.
Yes.
And so it's actually owned by Ron. So when people tell me, oh, well, my name's listed on line 4 and they're doing a bad job for their seller, which is unlikely, just to let you know, this is like once in 10 years, right? And they're doing a bad job. I actually have the power through Ron to reassign this listing to any other agent in my office. Now, 99.9% of the time, an upset seller just has a miscommunication and a misunderstanding. And we just solve it with the agent and we all move forward. But at the end of the day, I want to be very clear with what commissioner rules say, because you need to trust in your brokerage to know that we have your back. And I don't typically ever reassign because usually the client's just having, like I said, a miscommunication. It's usually they made up something in their head. Just always like, that's so cool. Can you explain to me what my agent did? Section 2 is the property. And this is what goes into, it's the address, the assessor number, and the legal description. So this is what the important part is, to be able to go back, and I would really suggest copying and pasting directly from the tax records. So the Maricopa assessor parcel number is what we call your assessor's number. So that's the book, map, and page number in the assessor's book. So if you went and grabbed the book off the shelf and blow on it, because it's really dusty, and you open it, that's how they would find your parcel. Why do you think we have to name a property 3 different ways on the ER agreement?
Just to make certain that it is actually that property and there's no mistakes, there's no ambiguity, there's no question.
Yeah, have you ever seen a new build that doesn't line up with the post office? They're like, that's not the right mailbox, that's not the right address. So everybody then starts going off the legal description. So exactly, Dave, it's all about making sure it's the right property. Do you think in Arizona, over time, anybody's ever sold the wrong property?
Yes,
They gave you those stories in pre-licensing, right? Let me tell you all the bad things. No, but it was really a different world just 50 years ago in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, there was a lot of dirt, 20 years ago in Arizona, half a surprise past Reams was not even created. And now we go past the white tanks. So it was really easy to sell the wrong lot. And so when the deed would change over, and that's why title insurance is so important, they would own the wrong lot. People have built houses on the wrong property and additions on the wrong property. So we really want to be careful and understand why. And so it's just 3 ways of making sure we're identifying and we're giving escrow really good instructions, because the purchase contract truly is what the escrow company needs to follow through with. And it's up to us to give proper instructions. And that's why we will never write on the legal description to be determined in escrow. And you see that with a lot of legacy people. Well, that's what I've always done. Doesn't mean it's right. So let's make sure life is better for all of us. Then we go into section 3. Everybody doing okay so far? Fantastic. In this situation, we're going to say for sale, or you could use this to rent a property as well, or you could do sale and rent. I would like you to know, if the selection is whatever happens first, then it is truly whatever happens first. You cannot collect someone's rental application on a property and your client collects their rental application fees, and then you're like, but I want to see if I can sell it first. No, it's good faith effort, and you move forward with whatever comes in first. So we want to make sure that our client understands that. So if your intent is to sell the property, let's try to sell the property. And then if you have a window that you said, no, in 3 months, if I haven't sold my home for what I want for it, I'm willing to rent it out. Great, we can do sell and rent, but we're going to put that in the additional clause that we're not going to be advertising this for rent until the 3-month mark. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people like to hold things and they go, well, I want to see. And it's like, that's not fair. We need to make sure that we're always honest and fair. The price here is something that I do not go to the listing appointment filled out with. This is something I have my clients handwrite an initial next to. The reason is, who actually prices their home, you or the seller? Seller, right. And if you have this pre-filled out, it doesn't feel like they have ownership, right? And it doesn't feel like they made the decision. But another way I get their buy-in is having them make the decision and having them write the amount down. And so I'm going to go with this section blank, but anything blank that's filled in at my listing appointment, I need them to initial next to it. Anything handwritten needs to be initialed next to. Does that make sense? The other thing is the term of the agreement. This is going to be the beginning date, which is usually the day I'm going to the listing presentation, and the ending date. Let's talk about the term. How long in today's market do you think you should be taking a listing contract for?
At least 6 months.
Okay, in your opinion, Scott, 6 months?
I was going to say 6 months also.
Jill, 6 months? Dave, I just see you saying yes, so you must agree.
I agree. I mean, I would try to talk them into a year in this market, but 6 months, I would say minimum.
Okay, awesome. Jesse, do you have an opinion?
Yeah, it depends, three to 6 months.
Okay, so Dave says 6 months to a year. Jesse says 3 to 6 months. Jill and Scott are both like, I feel good at 6 months. Okay, so I love all these opinions, and this is also another reason everyone's listing contract is a little bit different. I will tell you that your job is, when you pull comparables, to understand the time on the market for that subdivision. So if you ask me in April how long I should hold a seller hostage to work with me, I would say 3 months. If you ask me today, I am going to say closer to 6 months, because I know the median time on the market is about 90 days. And sometimes I go and I take that listing today, because I'm signing today when I go to the listing presentation, but they're not actually ready for photos for 2 more weeks. And then they need a 3rd week to move some stuff out, and that time is going to really kind of skew my numbers. So in today's market, I would definitely say 6 months. In yesterday's market, I would say 3 months. And if I'm doing my job right, they'll always extend with me. Also, I like to date my clients, right? Because I'm going to be loyal to them beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they end up being unreasonable or having expectations that there's just no way I'm ever going to hit that, and it makes no sense to me, maybe I want it to expire. I'm like, I'm free now, knock on wood. I've never taken a listing I haven't sold. Well, I lied. There's one in Surprise I didn't sell. But see, I let it expire too. I'll tell you what. Because sometimes a seller won't show a property. And can you sell a property a seller will not show at all? No, it's like nearly impossible. But at the end of the day, what the goal is to sell the house. But keep in mind, if you do your job right, it'll make them feel better. If you understand your numbers, you'll be able to gauge what this should look like. So in today's market, I agree 6 months, and you all kind of have that. Capacity. This is a big deal, guys, lines 24 through 25. And I would point it out to them. A lot of people skip the black and white. This says, whoever is signing this document today, the person I'm sitting down with right now, you are telling me that you have the ability to sell this property and that you are fully in a status that you can make decisions on your own. Okay, that you have the power to do so. Equal housing is not something we should skip over because it's in black and white on paper. I want you to say this very bold to them. I want you to tell your seller that everybody is green. They are only based on their ability to qualify for your home, and that you cannot discriminate against anybody. And the easiest way to give you an example of this, the biggest thing I hear is an innocent discrimination or prejudice on someone's home. And it's, I have raised my family at this house. I am so excited to sell it to another family. I can't wait to hear that someone else's kids and babies have enjoyed it as much as my kids and babies. I don't think anybody has ill intent when they say that. I don't think any seller's thinking I want to harm someone by restricting this to families only. Okay, I will never think that that is an ill intent statement. However, it's an illegal statement, and it's an illegal basis. So what I do is I have a rule of 3. If a seller that I'm sitting down with at the listing presentation says a statement that would violate equal housing, I will correct them 3 times. On that 3rd time, if they don't change, I will not take the listing. So in this situation, if someone said to me, I want a family to buy my home, I would say, that is so awesome. I totally get it. Tell me again about little Maya taking her first steps in the hallway, right? Because there's a connection there. However, I just want to let you know, I can't ask somebody, and we can't base your decisions off if they have kids or no kids. But what we can do is we can say no investors. We can look at their pre-qual and see if it's an owner occupant purchasing your property as a primary resident, or if it's a secondary residence, or if it's an investor. And these are not protected classes. So if you say, I'd rather take the primary resident over the investor, that's fine. But we cannot ask for love letters, and we cannot base anything off them personally. All we can ever base somebody off is their qualification to actually purchase your home. Does that make sense? And then I just let you know, if they're like, I absolutely do, and it's so funny to me when people say this, I absolutely do not want an investor to buy my home. I love my community. I will you know, and I just go, that's awesome. Now we can say no investor offers in the MLS. You can say that in private remarks. However, I want to ask you, don't you just want to see what might come in? Because it's really funny to me, if you do get an investor offer that's aggressive with fair market value, they start seeing their bank account instead of any of the other things they originally said. So make sure you're really careful with these limiting conversations. Also in equal housing, when you're doing the listing presentation and you're walking around and there are Confederate flags, there are tons and tons of crosses. There are things that might make somebody else feel uncomfortable. You never want to put in your advertising things that make somebody else feel uncomfortable. You are 110% responsible for what you put on the market with your photos. So in that, you might not want to go down how it discriminates against a certain, or it shows a prejudice against a certain category of people. What you might want to do is stick with what you do on all your listing presentations to make sure you're complying with 27 through 29 here. And just say, well, what we need to do when showcasing your home for marketing purposes is depersonalize it. We need to have someone walk into the property and be able to picture themselves and their own photos here. So let's depersonalize your property and then get marketing photos done. So if you see things that are going down this world, right, of someone could be showing a prejudice, we need to make sure that we're able to market the property with a non-prejudice base, and we also need to have the conversations that we're not going to dig deep into any of these areas. Any questions on this? Can this be the touchiest point of your listing presentation that might make it or break it for you?
I would say yes.
And can you stay extremely neutral and treat everybody the same, Dave?
Definitely.
I love the term depersonalize, make it feel like a new home. Take everything off the walls because you're moving out. You know, I've had a lot of clients that are attracted to me because I'm from the Midwest, and in the Midwest, we eat venison. And so all my deer friends, my deer hunting friends here in Arizona, love referring me out. And sometimes I walk into their properties and they have really big deer heads on the wall. And look, I know deer eat grass. Okay. They are vegetarian. I know this. But when they graze my hair every time I walk by, I kind of start freaking out a little bit. So I have to have basic conversation. That has nothing to do with equal housing, but I have to have the conversation of, I need you to put these in storage because we need somebody to be able to see the space for what the space is. So same conversations, guys. Okay. So just things to think about here. And it's a great point out when you're in your listing presentation, and it's more than just looking at who's buying your house, but look, I just don't want anything out there that might make someone feel off. So a listing I have personally coming up that's a personal referral to me, they have about 4 deer heads in their 1,400 square foot home in the living room. And so do you think that takes a lot of space? So I actually flat out said, because I know this family very well, I said, so there's some people that aren't going to dig this. So if we could take it down and just let them buy your house so you can make money, that would be great. They said, okay.
So Mandy,
Yes, ma'am.
at this appointment, this is the first time you're seeing their house, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So what if you are just like, I don't think I can work with this person because of what I see on the walls or something that is offensive to me? Can I, how do you handle that?
If somebody's personally offended me and I don't think I can represent them, I'm going to sit down at the table and I'm just going to be real, but not real, right? Because you have to also think of your own safety. Because if you're offended, you're also usually in a safety issue as well mentally. And I can be neutral to a lot of things. And I can turn a blind eye to a lot of things if they're willing to change it for how I'm going to market a property or what they do for my real estate transaction. But I might need to excuse myself. Number one, if you ever feel unsafe, excuse yourself. Maybe you had an emergency come up, maybe you guys have to run out, family emergency. I'm so sorry, I'm gonna have to reschedule. But if I'm sitting down with someone and in the conversation, when they tell me basically that they're not going to change their ways, of how we can move forward together, I go, you know what? I really would love to support you, but unfortunately, based on your needs, in my capacity right now, I can't give you 110% of my services, and I can't give anything below 110% to someone. So I can refer you out, or you can find another realtor, but unfortunately at this time, I don't have the capacity to take your home on as my listing. But thank you so much for this opportunity and getting to know your needs. And then you run,
Okay.
Jill. You briskly walk to the front door. But if you feel unsafe, or threatened in any way or harmed in any way walking in someone's home, you should not stay very long. But if you start digging deep into conversation, you need to find a polite way to excuse yourself and not sign the listing agreement. Okay. And I've never really had someone push back on me too hard after the third item. I have had someone give me a hard time through capacity though. I had a gentleman who drank excessively, and anytime I would see him, he started drinking right after work. And anytime I would see him, it was like a case of beer was already gone. And I don't think he had the mental capacity, in my opinion, because I think he was under the influence, to sign any documents. So I did drop him as a client because I didn't feel like I would be doing a good job if he ever said, well, you knew I was drinking when I signed that. Even if you function and drink, I don't want to be put in that position, right? So things to think about. Section 4 is a really heavy section. How many of you love talking about money? If you don't, gotta get there. Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, we were trained, we don't talk about religion, politics, or money. And then social media came along, so let's just own it. The one thing people leave on the table all the time is the fact that you cost something. You are a service, you are providing a service, and you are a business, and you cost something. So this is the hardest part for most people, and it will continue to be hard. There's no way, even after 20 years, that my heart doesn't sometimes go in my stomach, and I have to hold my breath in these conversations. But I have to know my value, what I bring to the table, and understand my worth. And if I don't, why would I hire me? So if you wouldn't hire you for the amount you're asking someone to hire you for, sorry, you're not allowed to ask them then, because that's not fair. They're not going to sign with you. So I need you to understand that from the get-go, and I need you to understand you're fully worth it. I need you to write down a website to get your mind in the right space on how this all works as well. And the website is competition.realtor. This is going to go over how we're paid, how we're compensated, and it's a forward-facing website to the public. When you're in this section, I do not want to hear, this is the standard, this is traditional, this is what we've always done. You, as you, have your own standard of practice. As Mandy Neat, I have my own standard of practice. However, I have to follow the policy and guidelines of Realty One Group, which state we don't care what you charge. You just owe us the transaction fee or whatever commission split you are on based on that sale. So if you want to be negative and out of pocket, that's on you, right? I don't want you to be negative and out of pocket, by the way, don't do that. And please practice in your office and practice with your friends on this as well. We're going to start with a retainer fee. When would you take a retainer fee? Go ahead, Eric.
I have taken retainer fees for luxury listings. When I know, or the seller knows I'm putting a whole bunch of money upfront into marketing. But that's been the only time I've taken a retainer fee.
But would you always ask for it then on luxury listings when you're putting that kind of money up front?
If I am doing it for one, I need to do it for all unless it's something unusual.
And why is that, Eric?
because if for some reason I'm ever investigated by anybody, I can lay all my contracts in front of everybody and show that they are consistent with all of my clients.
Right, which means you did not discriminate. So I can't charge Jesse a retainer fee and then not even ask Jill for a retainer fee, because then Jesse might say, you only charge me because I'm a guy. And Jill's like, well, that's the bonus of being a chick, right? And that is discriminatory in my practices. And I have harmed Jesse by charging him a retainer fee. So that is right, Eric. What I do for one, I must do for all. Go ahead, Jesse, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, my question is, what's the percentage of retainer?
A retainer fee is a flat fee. It's not a percentage and it's an upfront fee. Companies like Berkshire Hathaway charge a retainer fee on every single listing and it's paid directly to the brokerage. So every time someone from Berkshire Hathaway talks to me and they're totally excited about Warren Buffett, and I just think to myself, Warren Buffett's really excited about you and those retainer fees. But keep getting excited, my friend. But I just want you to know this is a dangerous slope. Because if you charge for one and you don't charge for another, it could be seen as discriminatory practice. The only time I will charge a retainer fee is kind of like what Eric said, when I have so much out-of-pocket costs to even get their listing notice. Like yesterday was a One Lux event in Paradise Valley. It was a $10 million property. For a $10 million property, you better be out of pocket at least $2,000 right away on marketing. Well, I might want that. might want them to meet me in the middle, stagers, everything else, right? That's a big listing. That's a totally different demographic than a standard American buying a home. So we want to make sure that we set ourselves up for success. But then with that said, you have a standard of practice and writing for yourself that says, when going to a listing presentation, I always ask for this on these properties, right? Now, if they can negotiate with you, if you open negotiations, it's all negotiable, but you need your own standard of practice. Now, here's the hard part, commissions. For the most part, you're all brand new. And for those who are not brand new in our industry, I would love to teach them that you cannot say standard. There is no such thing as a standard commission. What law does saying that violate?
Antitrust?
Yep, Anti-Sherman Trust Act. Thank you, Jesse. Everything is negotiable. If you want to work for $500, more power to you. I'm going to say, I'm sorry that you're negative all the time, but because you're going to be in the negative all the time, but you can. On the buyer broker compensation on MLS, it can show $1. And that's a whole nother day for buyer broker agreements. But at the end of the day, there is no standard, period. Also, I am at that listing presentation for me to get the listing. I am a listing agent at the listing presentation. I am there to represent that seller. I am going to go in with my standard of practice. This will be pre-filled out at 6%. It's going to be printed. It's going to be ready to go. However, that doesn't mean I can't open a conversation if they open it with me. And they will open it with me. And they will ask me for a discount, won't they? Any smart consumer will ask me for a discount. How many of you shop for groceries without coupons? Okay, I know.
Sometimes I do because
Yeah.
I need what I need. And if it's not on sale, that's the way it goes.
But do you still plug in your little VIP number at the cashiers to see if you get a discount?
Sure. Yeah.
So you never truly shop without the idea of, if I plug something in, somehow I'm going to get an advantage.
Absolutely. I'm always looking for, a deal.
I mean, the fact is, if you shop at Fry's, any of the Kroger brand stores, you put your VIP number in, because even if it's not on sale, you're going to get 10 cents off your gas when you hit $100 in groceries. So
Right.
let's just talk about it. We're always looking for a deal. And so I tell people flat out, thank you for asking me. I fully respect the fact you asked for me, and I'm excited to know that you know how to advocate for yourself. But let me ask you a question. If I'm this fast to reduce my commission to what you're asking me to reduce it to based on my standards, how fast am I to reduce your sales price just to sell your house? And then you'll see their face change. And you have to sit there, and I personally hold my breath because if you haven't noticed, I like to talk. Jill was like, Mandy, stop. I got this improv thing down. I was like, yes, ma'am. You keep going, my friend. She was so good. Dave, you were so fun too. And this is something we should be practicing. This would be a great improv technique. Jesse, we had an event yesterday at the office, and it was just like fun communication. But an impromptu conversation is, if I ask you to go from 6% to 5%, that's a 1% difference there. Maybe what I'm really willing to do is go to 5.5% and offer 2.5% on the other side and take 3% still on my side for upfront fees. When a buyer's agent gets upset about that, I like to ask the buyer's agent when they see that settlement statement, let me ask you, when you used to work at Lowe's Home Improvement or McDonald's when you were 16, who walked in to negotiate your rate of salary? Was it you or your mother? Because why, as a listing agent, am I always put out for the other side, right? I want to offer something that I consider fair, treat others the way I expect to be treated. Actually treat others better than I expect, but I don't expect much. But at the end of the day, I'm there to negotiate me. Here's how I negotiate this. In the event I'm willing to reduce this to 5%, it would only be because, this is how I've always practiced it, they are buying a home through me as well. And they agreed to sign a 6-month buyer broker agreement at a 3% commission rate, which means if it's less than 3%, they're making up the difference. But I'm helping them get more money on the forefront for their down payment on their new property, right? And if I know someone's struggling, by the way, we have an amazing opportunity as realtors to be able to help people. I might not charge the difference. Like, I get to decide when I get there, and I get to have the conversation when we get there. But the only way you're getting this reduced on for me in that listing presentation from 6 to 5 is if they sign a buyer broker with me. The other item that I will reduce that for me as Mandy, you can take it or leave it, okay, is if they are a repeat client. I am on my 7th deal with one family. Can't believe I've been a realtor for 20 years. And when I list their properties, they buy and sell through me loyally. They referred me out beyond measure. Like, I am so grateful for this family. I list them for 5, and I do 2.5 and 2.5 for my split. But that's because I know that 10 years down the road, I'll probably have 7 more deals from them. You know, so you have to decide for you where you want to be. My first listing presentation was my aunt and uncle. And that might sound easy, but I'm going to tell you, my aunt, she is a hard cookie, and her knowing me since a baby, right? Man, she had high expectations and she wanted it all for free. So let me tell you, family is not an easy sell. So I dropped myself immediately at the table on my first presentation from 6 to 5. I cut me before she even cut me. She signed with me. I sold their house in 1 week, closed it in 30 days. They removed, the money was wired, boom, 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 right? And you know what my uncle said to me? And I am still kind of a little bitter, Uncle Craig, just gonna put that out there. Never forget this one. Actually, I'm not bitter. I'm still quite excited that I had my first deal. He said, you know, it was amazing, Mandy. The first guy we listed with, it was at 7%, and he couldn't even move our house. We listed for you with 5%, and you sold it in a week, and you showed up to every showing. Also called being brand new and not knowing better. But at the end of the day, I was like, what? I could have gotten 6. You know, so if you cut you, they're definitely going to take it. Oh yeah, you know, I wasn't even going to ask for that much. So be willing to know your value and have the conversations. The other piece that some of my friends like to do is they'll take a cookie, like a Miss Fields cookie, which that's way too expensive in my opinion, or a pizza, or they'll just draw a circle and they draw it in thirds and they say, okay, if this is my marketing, right? If this is my, I can't show you on paper, but if this is my marketing and this is what the IRS gets and this is what my broker gets, and then they'll show a little part and they'll say, this is what's left for me. What part of me do you want me to cut out? And people go, oh, I didn't realize. Because at the end of the day, they don't realize 40% of our money, if you do your taxes right, typically go to the IRS right off the bat. Does not feel good, right? So when we're cutting the pie, what part are you asking me to cut? And then if you want to break down that marketing piece and say, okay, these are all the services I provide. If you cut half of that, yeah, I can down me, but then you're cutting half of the services I provide. So there's a lot of ways to have this conversation. So line 39 is the full amount that you're offering, that you're obtaining. And that's what Realty One Group obtains. What you need to remember is Realty One Group as the listing brokerage is who is paying the other brokerage. So out of that 6%, in this example, 2.5% of it is going to the other side. The reason I show you this way is I want you to know the listing broker is there for them. Can a listing broker make 3.5 of that 6? Absolutely. I personally treat others the way I want to be treated, so that would have been a 3 for me. Because I always split it down the middle in most cases. But it could be 2.5. I just don't want you to think that there is a standard out there that they have to split this with you. There is not on the buyer side, okay? So this is you negotiating. For rentals, please get with your broker if you're doing a rental, because rentals are the most litigious part of our community, yet they are the least compensated. $200. You're like, yay! But you know what you do with a rental is you help a human being have a home, and it does matter. And I think that's why I've been so successful in my business. So I don't want you to turn them away. Help your friends, help people that know you, because the other guy that says I'm too busy to do a rental, well, are you too busy to show them houses? Because I'm not. I'll make the time. And so just keep that in mind. But rentals, the total amount of the gross a rental amount, or it can be a flat fee. So it used to be pretty typical in my life that I would just charge 6% of the gross rent. So if it was a $2,000 a month rental and it was a 12-month rental, it'd be based on 24,000, 6% of 24,000. And then out of that, there'd be a percentage given to the other person who brought the tenant. Or sometimes if that's not enough, you want to do a flat fee and offer a flat fee to the tenant's broker as well. Now, you see a lot of property management companies say they don't need us, so you don't see all the rentals on MLS. Rentals are a hot commodity. So just note that sometimes you're going to see $200, $150. I try to make it worth someone's time and gas money. I try to make it worth my time and gas money too, by the way. Please note 51 and 52, in my opinion, we do not do property management. Therefore, you should not be extending somebody's lease or renewing their lease. We should not be involved at that point. So I don't see why you would make anything as an agent right here, because we don't handle property management. This is more a property manager would be doing the renewal or the extension. I don't mean you can't. I'm just saying I just don't see us reopening that bag unless they're ready to go back on the market. I want to be really careful there. The next section we're going to go down to is 59 and 61. This is a really important section. If the seller decides they're not going to sell the house and they withdraw the listing, they owe you the entire compensation based on page 1's list price. So don't put to be determined, okay? Based on that list price, they owe you that whole commission to withdraw or cancel that listing. If someone doesn't want to sell their house, are you going to force them to sell their house? Please don't. Come to a negotiation. Maybe you want reimbursement for your advertising fees, okay? But at the end of the day, I have said to sellers that are just unreasonable for our agents, well, you can give them the $500 they're asking for and they'll release you from the listing contract. Or I'm happy to charge you the full 6% based on the $420,000 list price. Please let me know what you would like to do by the end of today. And before I, as your broker or your broker, signs that listing cancellation, I expect to see that money. Does that make sense? Canceling it off MLS does not cancel your exclusive right to sell agreement. That's the status on MLS. That's a whole different gamut. So make sure you understand that and you tell your clients that. The next one that we really need, any questions? Okay, the next one we really need to go over here is after expiration. I typically put 60 days here. This is really a workaround technique. So let's say you have an owner who won't leave the house when they get the property sold, shown. And the buyer comes in and the owner's like, hey, if you just wait till my listing contract expires next week, I'll work with you directly. And then we can cut the agents out and we can both save money. No, that buyer bought because of me, because of the marketing I did. Therefore, I'm still owed compensation. Does that make sense? However, if you list with another broker as soon as our listing agreement expires, then this part is obsolete. But if you're trying to do the workaround, oh yeah, it was great that you're here today. It expires, so just call me next Monday after it expires and I'll deal with you directly. Well, that's not fair. That's not kind. You had an agreement with me, so you're gonna owe me that compensation. This one is a part that 71 through 72. I wish I could make that bigger for you guys. Yeah, it just doesn't like me. Bigger? Yes. This part, no one seems to talk to their sellers about. This part needs to be brought back up during negotiations of your purchase contract. It says, seller, if you fail to complete the sale once we're under purchase contract and you, if you fail to complete it, you owe me the compensation. If I win the earnest money on your behalf, my brokerages do half the amount of the earnest money or the full commission, whichever is less. So if you allow a seller to take $2,000, right, as earnest money, and that buyer somehow does not perform any way out properly and they don't close, and we obtain that earnest money amount for our seller, we're owed $1,000 and the seller gets $1,000. But if that seller was expecting $2,000 and you never had this discussion with them, they're going to be upset that they didn't negotiate more earnest money from the get-go, right? So we really, really want to understand that. Do you guys understand that? Okay, here's the part that's in contract class. That's not in listing class. Oh, Scott?
Yeah, can you explain that again? I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay.
understand, like, the earnest money would go back to, we would get part of that?
Yeah, if you do it properly. So if for some reason the buyer's earnest money is forfeited to the seller, Realty One Group as the listing brokerage would be owed half the earnest money. Because think about all the time that you put into this deal. Think about the whole process. So you're basically getting paid for your work. And the owner would get half the money. But that's not fair to an owner if you never had the discussion with the owner. Right? I'd love to enforce it for you, but I can't enforce it if you can't prove the discussion. So make sure you tell me, I absolutely went over this. I went over it in the listing presentation, and then I also went over it when we were negotiating contracts. Is that going to be enough money for you for the time off the market? And knowing that you'll only receive half. How likely is it that the seller even obtains the earnest money?
No
Go ahead,
clue.
Eric. Oh.
A cure notice was filed.
A cure notice would have to be filed, and then the buyer still wouldn't be performing. And how many days after a cure notice is filed against a buyer does the buyer have to fix the issue?
10 days?
But that would be horrible, but good idea. Right, Jesse, like everything would be solved, I hope. 3 days, they have 3 days. And so today being, what is today? Today's Friday. Today being Friday, if a cure notice was issued to a buyer today, they would have Saturday, Sunday, and all of Monday to fix it. And the seller wouldn't have the right to cancel until Tuesday. So really it feels like 4 days. So these are things I just want to let you know. A buyer typically gets their earnest money back 95% of the time. They really have to mess up not to get it back. But at the end of the day, if they really mess up that bad, you have a pretty ticked off seller. So you better make sure that you've had this discussion with them. 74 through 77 is just really, this is an agreement that the Arizona Association of Realtors has put together through our legal teams. Please note, we cannot write out the law or write around the law. So if someone asks us to write in something that seems illegal, it's unenforceable. If at any time any of this contract becomes something that is no longer lawful, it would be unenforceable. I don't see how that would be possible. We're not really that hard here, so the ER is pretty basic. This part of the property is that part, or the listing agreement is the part that you really want to be walking the property with them and going over things. What do you want to take with you? You cannot take your doorbell just because it's a Ring doorbell, okay, guys, with you, because then you leave a big hole in the property. So make sure if there's anything here that is a fixture that you want to take with you, you tell me now, because we're going to have to counter it out for you to keep it. And also we're going to want to advertise that way as well. But keep in mind, the contract states these are the items that convey with the house. A big one being drapes and other window coverings. This means all the curtains, including the outside patio curtains, remain with the property. If you feel as though those are something you want to keep, please take them down prior to me taking photos. The one that is being debated right now, again, for the millionth time, is wall-mounted TV brackets and hardware. And we had to write in excluding TVs. How sad is that, that we're that petty? But anyways, that just means we had a lot of arguments. It's come to my attention as a broker, because I get the issues, that there are some wall mounts that are now specific for the TV and they're no longer universal. So sellers assume that they can take them with them because they're specific to the TV. A new TV is called the frame TV, and it looks like a big picture on your window, but it's a TV. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to take that. Well, no, you can't. That should have remained with the property. Now, I want you to know, a buyer cannot hold up closing on a property because the wall mount is missing. Okay. Now, if it's a health safety issue, they can hold it up. But last time I checked, there's no wall mount that's a health safety hazard. So if the wall mount's missing and you represented a buyer, what would you do?
First, I talk to the listing agent and say, where is the mount? How come it's gone?
And they say, I don't know. Obviously, they don't listen to me. I will ask them to bring it back. And then what do you do?
Let me know when you get it mounted.
I know Dave's like, I'm just gonna keep like playing hardball. All right, well, what you would do is you would issue the pre-closing walkthrough on section 2, and you would say the wall mount was missing. The buyer would move forward closing, and then the buyer would actually have the ability to go to small claims court, which would probably be cheaper and less stressful to just go buy a new wall mount, but whatever. Also, realtors out there who are like in their head right now, I see it in your faces. Well, I will just go mount them a new wall mount. No, you won't, because if your screw is not tight enough or your nail in that wall and that falls down, guess who's liable? You. So don't forget that you can hand them the wall mount, but you're not the one putting it on the wall. All right, additional existing personal property that can be included with the sale that the lender doesn't care about is going to be the fridge, washer, and dryer. You need to have these questions. You need to ask these questions. When you say the fridge is going to stay, do you mean the one in the garage or the one in the kitchen, or do you mean both? When the washer and dryer you say they convey, do you mean these ones? Do you have other ones I don't know about? You know, make jokes just to find out detailed information, because you will be amazed at things people do sometimes. Are there any leased systems in the home? One, a lot of times, is when someone says their pool is salt. I have a salt pool. Sometimes it's because of the pool service that they're receiving that it's salt now instead of chlorine. And if that pool service is canceled, the pool guy takes the salt stuff and it goes back to chlorine. So these are things we need to be asking. The water softener. I still don't understand that concept of leasing a water softener, but that's beyond me. Solar system is a really big deal because that's going to add an extra layer of disclosures and addendas. So you need to be asking a lot of questions here. You should have a lot of focus right here during the time that you're going over this with your sellers. Everybody good? Good. Agency, woo-hoo, loving this part. I am so excited we added this to the listing contract now as actual talking points. This is saying, hey, I represent you as the owner's realtor, and in such I have loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, and accounting. I am becoming your golden retriever as we sit here and we discuss more items. I'm excited to see you. I am going to put you first at all times, but I need you to understand that the owner acknowledges that broker may show prospective buyers the premises and that shall not constitute as a conflict of interest, which takes us down to line 118, unlimited representation. In the likelihood, one of the 3,000 colleagues of mine in the Maricopa County area show your property representing a buyer. This could limit my fiduciary duties to you, but I really don't want to take out their ability to do this. Even though I don't know that buyer, what happens is this conversation changes to I'm more of a ref at that point than a coach. I just can't do anything or say anything that would be detrimental to that buyer, and the other agent won't be able to say anything or do anything that could be detrimental to you. But we want to allow those showings to occur because we have the second largest market share in all of Maricopa County. And then you smile. And yes, this is being recorded. And yes, this is on Facebook Live. And if you want to go back and use my verbiage, please feel free. Conduct of brokers, that I am to treat all parties fairly and disclose everything in writing. But I can only disclose what may adversely affect the consideration to be paid on the premises or material facts on the premises. I am not going to disclose personal items. I will tell you when you have a seller or a buyer 95% of the time until you get that one client that just truly keeps a business with you, will tell you way too much personal information about them. You are not to utilize this in any of your discussions with the other side, including and not limited to their motivation for selling. That is not a material fact to the buyer. They want to know because they want to use it as a negotiation technique. Let me tell you why you should sell it to my buyer. But at the end of the day, that is not something I have to disclose in writing unless it is an actual disclosure of the property. Does that make sense? It then goes further into limited representation, which I really, really think you need to come to agency class on this because we could spend 3 hours on this topic alone. But it's just saying, hey, I'm going to have to limit my conversations on both sides in the case that another Realty One Group agent's involved. I'm going to have to limit it to just what you tell me. So if you say this, I will say that, but I cannot then go forward and go, well, my client might come up to 510 and yours might go down to 505. Like we can't have these conversations. What you tell me you want to counter with, I will counter in writing, but I can't do anything that would make it seem like you would take a price different than what we put it on the market for. I can't do anything to harm you. Competing owners, Realty One Group agents might take properties that compete with your properties as listings, and you need to understand that we are only listing and marketing it based on what that owner wants. Just like I'm doing and giving you the power here, we might have competing owners as well, and that's just called competition in the marketplace. Any questions
Mandy,
before? Yeah.
Can you explain that competing owners a little more?
So I'm listing your house today, Jill, and I love your property, and we're listing it based on the marketing plan set forth and the price that we discussed that you decided on. But say tomorrow your neighbor calls me and they want me to list their home, or they call a colleague of mine, which is very likely, and they want them to list their home. Please understand that at that appointment, we're only going to sit down and go over the marketing plan for their house, and they're going to decide on their own price point. So Realty One Group, in sense, might be marketing more than one property that directly competes with your property. Does that make sense? Thank you. I know I need more Claritin D. Like my nose is running in here. Broker authority. This one is like, I want you to highlight this on your agreements that you go over with your client. I am not responsible for the condition of your home, and I am not your property manager. I am not your contractor. I am not going to meet the plumbers and the electricians and take photos and lock up your property. That is on you, seller. It is your house. You own your house. If you would like a property manager, I can refer you to a few friends and they can manage your home for a cost, but I am not a property manager. I am simply to market, keep your risk down, and sell your property. Also, that they understand anything we do to advertise the property belongs to us, right? So Jill, the photos you take of the property belong to you. They do not belong to that seller. And that's really important to know. Also, that we're going to put the property on the multiple listing service, which you all know as ARMLS. And in such, we're going to go through an IDX and syndicate to the World Wide Web. And this is giving us permission to do so. Also, they need to understand if we are to market the property to the public in any capacity, as a Realtor member, we are obligated to cooperate with all brokers. Therefore, within 1 business day of going publicly advertising, which could be as simple as a listing sign in the front yard, you are to be on MLS. Or you could be fined $500 a day. Let's not get fined. I don't like fines. I don't like nasty grams. Okay. Signs. They're giving us permission to put up a sign, hopefully. I really love signs, but sometimes I'm just going to tell you, it's so funny to me. You'll get this seller that says, I don't want my neighbors to know. I'm like, but your neighbors are going to know. And they're like, but I don't want them to know. I want them to have to figure it out. Why are all these random cars coming to your property? And I'm thinking, don't you want your neighbors to tell their friends to buy the house? I'm like, but okay. So some people actually don't want to sign. So you need their permission. Photos. They're going to authorize you that you can take photos, not take photos. You always want them to say yes. So these boxes actually on my ER when I go are already filled out. At a bare minimum on MLS, you have to have a front elevation photo of the property or you're in violation of MLS rules. So that's your bare minimum photo. Lockbox is, and this is the blue box. They're going to allow me to install a blue lockbox. This is how I track who's in and out of the home. Even if you're going to be here to open the door, seller, because you won't leave your house, even though I've told you 10,000 times to leave your house. I need them to use the blue lockbox because that's going to give me an actual electronic log of who's been in and out of your home, which protects us and allows me to get feedback, right? How am I going to get feedback if I don't know who was there? Well, you can pick up the business cards. I'm like, no, that is not what's going to happen, but that is so fun. Offers. This one is really big. I always say I am allowed to disclose the existence of offers to other people making offers. I need the seller's permission to do this either way. Okay, but if I don't have their permission to disclose, I cannot disclose. So if I have an offer on the table for cash full price and an FHA buyer agent calls saying, I have an FHA buyer, they're really excited about the property. How does your seller feel about giving concessions? I want permission to say I have a full price offer on the table. Because why am I going to, and this is part of the treat others better than you expect to be treated. Why am I going to have you go show the home and have your buyer fall in love with the property that I know they're going to go with another contract on? Like, I just don't like putting people through the ringer. So I always say, let me negotiate. Also, if I have 3 contracts or 3 offers on the property, I want the freedom, if none of them are Realty One Group agents, to shop them on the phone. Yeah, I got these terms from Joe. Can you beat them? Can you send an addendum? We can do a multiple counter. We can do whatever we want, but I want to be able to actually discuss the terms. I would like to tell you, since most of you are brand new, nothing in real estate is confidential when it comes to offers on the table. The only time they would be confidential is if a non-disclosure agreement was sent over and signed between the buyer and the seller prior to presenting the offer. So when you hear realtors and CE Class A, and then I black out this information, it makes me laugh because none of it is considered confidential. Everyone can know the name of your client. If you set yourself up right, they are your client. There is nothing to fear. So just FYI on that. And I would like you to know, even in the PV district, Paradise Valley, the $10 million plus homes, most of the time they don't even have NDAs. Like, I've only seen one my whole career. So it's not a common thing. The subsequent purchase or lease offers, I always let my seller know you have the right to continue to collect offers, but you always have to move forward in good faith with the contract on the table, right? Like if you sign a contract, it becomes a contract, you have to move in good faith, but we can continue to accept backup offers until it closes. A backup offer is just that, it's in backup position. A backup contract, you can only have one. And that would be a backup contract in the event this one falls out, we have one we immediately go to. However, keep in mind that buyer can pull out and cancel at any time before going into first position. Because why would they stop shopping? I always mark withhold verbal offers. Have you ever in your life been promised something and it doesn't come true? Yeah. And then you wish you could go back and be like, wish I got that in writing. This is what will happen. See, we have an obligation to disclose everything, which includes verbal offers. So I want them to tell me I don't have to. Unless it's in writing, it's not real. And I personally never check this box. It says withhold all offers once owner accepted purchase contract, because I feel as though my job is to be transparent and I don't want to just keep information away from my seller. So I'm always going to let them know what's going on. Always. Not my house. I am serving my seller. I am representing my seller. And in my opinion, my seller's best interest is to know everything going on about their house. Okay, so I never check this box, but that's up to you. Cancellation. This one, I don't like enforcing this one. You better have a really good reason. This is when we have the right to unilaterally cancel the contract. A seller cannot unilaterally cancel this contract. We can. And we can only cancel this for cause, which means to me that they put you in a safety issue, that you're fully uncomfortable and you fear for yourself. Or they've done something that violates licensing law and you're risking your license. That's what cause means to me. If it's because this day they're moody and you just don't do moody anymore, that is not enough to say it's for cause. We are professional. We are to keep moving forward. But if you tell me they're harassing you, they're calling you all hours of the day, they're claiming things that are untrue, yeah, we might cancel that, right? So you always want to make sure that you understand that when you sign up with someone, because this is a bilateral agreement, you can say no from the get-go. If you sign up with someone, you're seeing this through. But if they do make you feel like you're in harm's way or you are ill over them or anything that's just like, it's just too much, like I cannot serve this person, this is why, and there's nothing we can do to overcome it, then we will cancel the listing contract. I've only had to do that 3 times in 5 years, and I will tell you that the sellers were very mean, just very mean humans that were threatening my agents, and that's not okay. We can't pull that out, right? The next thing is that the owner promises that they will provide access to the property at reasonable times. Define that with your client, please. Define what reasonable is. Maybe they work midnight, so maybe reasonable to them is 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., right? Okay, well, I just need to know that up front. I just can't get a bunch of no's from the get-go, though. Like, set the expectation up front, understand where they are in life. Security, insurance, showings, audio, and video. We are not responsible for their property. This is one of the areas where when people ask me, why can't I sit an open house from another brokerage? Right here. Why can't another brokerage set an open house with us? Right here. If someone harms themselves on that property, if someone steals something on that property, if anything happens on that property, here is our hold harmless agreement. That's on the seller. It is not on me. But when it's not our company, it's fully on us. And if someone from another company sat our listing, we have no agreement releasing us now, right? Because they only hired Realty One Group. So this is something we want to tell them. It's up to you to insure the property. Now, seller, if you're going to have audio and video, I really need you to put a note on the door saying you will be recorded in this property. Okay, but for all of us, we just assume we're always recorded, right? Now, this can be a little strategic. Sometimes when I'm next to the Ring doorbell and I have a buyer really wanting to win something, I might be talking next to the Ring doorbell saying, this house was so great. Aren't you excited to be putting in an offer? I recommend you put in da 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 because you really want to win, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I can't wait to make this house my home. And I'm like, yeah, right next to the Ring doorbell. Woohoo! Not saying that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying it might be a negotiating tactic. Okay. But don't say anything that could harm equal housing. Adverse information. I don't live with you. I don't live here. I am here to market your property. You promise and guarantee to the best of your ability and knowledge base. You will disclose everything to do with the ability to sell your home, including any liens that are currently on your property, because that could affect them at close of escrow. And so this is saying, I'm off the hook. Again, I'm off the hook. I don't live with you. I don't know if your garbage disposal was ever broken. I don't know why that piece of wood underneath it is completely drenched. That's up to you to disclose. And then here's all the different disclosures that may or may not apply. There, I was looking for one in particular. If it's someone selling a rental property, they don't have it here, but there is an addendum that you're going to see in this week's newsletter called income producing property addendum. I need to make sure that you guys are including that with all your contracts, because it goes over more disclosures that the seller is going to need to give. But the SPDS is the #1 item. Insurance claims history, that's also known as your clue report, and the HOA addendum, page 1, is a disclosure item. Okay. Make sure that you go through this. And if the solar addendum always applies if there is solar. All right. We're almost there, guys. You doing all right? Having a party? A lot of stuff to look at. I do need you to print this out for yourself later, highlight it, go through it, understand it, call your mentor. If you don't, let us go through it with you and answer your questions, okay? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of elements, but understanding this language is essential. This is where you win. You break it or make it, you know? I used to skip over words just because I wasn't comfortable having the discussions. I'd be like, well, do you have any questions here? And I would just pause because I didn't know how to explain it. I mean, I'd still win, but it doesn't feel good to leave kind of like, oh, did I really inform my clients of everything they should know? Right? So I want you all to do good from the get-go. Recommendations. If I recommend you an affiliate to use, AKA roofer, plumber, electrician, handyman, window cleaner, it's up to you to vet them, to decide if you want to use them. Don't use them just because of me. Call them, ask them questions important to you. I might like something about someone and you might not. That's okay. But it's on you on who you decide to use. Indemnification again. That one was a hold harmless. This is also a hold harmless. Look, you're releasing us from knowing facts and figures and information about your property, and it's all on you. It's all on you. I am here to facilitate and make sure you understand the obligations. It's up to you to disclose. I do not investigate. Also, if you need an attorney, a CPA, or any other kind of advice, please note that my lane is only residential real estate. And I'm happy to let you know when I'm leaving my lane, because I can't leave my lane, and I will give you a proper source. But again, let's go back to the paragraph above. And it's up to you to vet them to decide if you want to utilize them. Any questions? Oh, did you notice how it says initial here? That means they've acknowledged and understood the paragraph in which they are reading. It's so important that you can't just initial the bottom of the page and pretend you understood what the heck I told you on this page. It's that you actually need to read this specific paragraph and understand what I am not liable for. Who's going to give you the most pushback on this paragraph?
Attorneys.
Yeah. And Mike, what do we tell those attorneys?
It is what it is. Read it.
Well, yep, that would be a Mike thing. I always like to say, so let me ask you, if I were to hire you for your legal services, would you waive your indemnification clause? And if they even say, well, I'd consider it, I just laugh a lot. And I say, well, that's really nice. But I won't remove mine. And just to let you know, I actually don't have the authority to remove it. You'd have to call Mr. Ron Copus, and I know he will tell me not to take your listing in the event you're forcing me to remove the indemnification clause. You understand as well as I do, there's certain limitations that I have, and me not living in this home for the past 5 years with you means I don't know anything. So that's all you're saying, is that you're going to be truthful and honest to the best of your ability. Is that really such a problem? And then they go, right, and they initial it. It's amazing. All right, remedies. This is a part too that agents sometimes don't fully understand. Okay, I need you to know, we do not go to court. When people go, and we go to court, no, it's not court. Now, for those on this phone call today who have been at court, we both understand that it is a miserable process if you ever get that far. However, what we all do in real estate across the nation is called an alternative dispute resolution. And that means we go through mediation, we go through arbitration, and then if there's still something that we don't like, then we get legal advice on a larger scale, and then they'll go to court for us, right? But we don't just go to court. Now, if it's under $1,500, no, I'm sorry, they bumped it to $2,500. If it's under $2,500 and it's a harm issue that you can prove tangible financial harm, small claims court does prevail in those cases. But we typically always go through ADR. If there is an issue between a seller and a buyer that is a legal binding issue, we actually are not attorneys. We can't help them with that. That dispute goes through the ADR process. And if you write down AARonline.com, you can go to resolve dispute button and give your client the source so they can file accordingly through ADR, and they can use the Arizona Association of Realtors as their platform. So these are things you need to know. We try to avoid this, by the way. I'm just gonna put that there. I try to just take issues head on so we can just keep moving forward with life. I don't like losing sleep. Now, additional terms and conditions. This is where you would write different things in. It's very small. I enjoy the fact it's a very small area. Line 239, I gave you an example of something, and this is an example of what we call variable commission. So in MLS, it has the word VAR dot. That means variable, and it's under the buyer broker compensation section. What that means is that if no other agent is involved in the transaction, that realtor is willing to reduce the commission by an amount. That is the variance. So in this case, it says, in the event there is no other agent involved in a purchase contract, the total commission will be reduced to 5% of the sales price, which is a variance of 1%, because remember the listing contract in our example today was 6%. When you see a yes for variable commission, you can call the listing agent and ask for the amount of the variance, because our buyer needs to know if they had no representation or they were using the listing agent, the seller would net 1% more. So that way they can be more aggressive with their tactic of what they're going to offer. Does that make sense? No? Okay, so I'm gonna
Can you
type.
kind of just walk through an example of what, like a real life example?
Yes, I want to
Okay.
get us a little whiteboard, and I appreciate it. Let's see, whiteboard.
And also, will be reduced to 5%. I was almost finished writing it. It disappeared. 5% of what, the total commission?
Yes. Let's get back to that page. Somehow I reset my page here. I was trying to get to a, they used to give us a whiteboard we could use, but I'll just open PowerPoint.
Of the sales price. Got it.
I want to draw it for you, Jill. I like pictures. I don't know about you, but you've always been so kind. She always goes with the flow. All right, so you all can see PowerPoint, right? All right, so my regular, my ER agreement is for 6% of the sales price. Now, I've decided I'll do a variable commission. So what I tell the seller is, hey, You know, you asked for a discount, and because I love you so much, I want to make sure at every angle that I could discount my commission, I go ahead and take care of that for you. So let's say Joe walks off the street and Joe doesn't have a realtor and Joe's going to be unrepresented. Well, then I'll reduce my commission by 1% of the sales price, taking the commission now to 5% of the sales price, saving you $4,000. So that is an added amount to the seller because Joe didn't have representation. So therefore, if Mike calls and says, hey, what's that variance? And I say 1%, then he knows if I have an offer with no representation or I represent both sides, that my seller is going to net $4,000 more. So he might need to increase their offer to offset the variance. Because what does a seller base their decision on? Hopefully the amount they're going to net. And that's really all they care about. And as a seller, you have to ask yourself, would $4,000 make a difference to what offer you go with if everything else was the same? Yeah, I mean, actually like 500 bucks is, I go for the bigger number. You know, does that make sense now?
It does. I guess I didn't realize that someone could buy a house unrepresented.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. See, if I
Okay.
represent a seller and my seller says they are not okay with limited representation and Joe does not have an agent, I can actually have Joe sign off on the agency stating he understands that I only work for the seller. And all of my communications with Joe have to be truthful and honest, right? Because I have to be fair and honest with the other side. I do have the duty of disclosure on material facts and accounting to the timeline, but every email from Joe from that point on will be very factual. And he'll say, if you have any further questions, feel free to consult your own representation or attorney.
Okay,
And then Joe represents himself.
okay.
It's hard to stay in that lane of one party being unrepresented sometimes because you feel for people and you'll want to overspeak. And that's the problem, is you start having gray areas of representation. So it doesn't feel like they're unrepresented. So we always have to put ourselves back in check with our communications, but it's absolutely possible. So when you see variable from now on, I want you all, if you represent a buyer, to call and find out what the variance is. Cool? And just to let you know, it's utilized improperly on a regular basis. So the listing agent might be confused. You might have to define what you're asking them. Okay. 254. Oh, anything else can go here too. Another thing I have here commonly is that the seller gives me instructions not to list the home on ARMLS until professional photos are taken. And with that, I would be using our clear cooperation addendum as a Realty One Group form saying you understand I cannot advertise to the public until we're ready to go on MLS. So a lot of things can go here. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is they're going to say to you, well, I'm not ready to go on the market until, so will you come back with the paperwork? My answer is, you know what? Let's just get the paperwork out of the way now and we can delay when we actually start marketing. Because I'm not leaving that listing without an ER agreement signed.
I have a question.
Uh-oh.
I don't use SkySlope Forms. Does it have the use of clauses?
Yes, in the templates and things, you can add clauses.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Mike uses Transaction Desk, which is our other platform given to us from the Arizona Association of Realtors. Realty One Group has a contract through them with SkySlope to allow all the forms to be updated and provided to you here. Transaction Desk is a little more complex than SkySlope, but when you get used to one, you kind of just stick with it. So I use both. And it's good to have a backup too. So just know you have the ability to use both platforms. Assignment Neither broker or owner may assign any rights or obligations to this without consent of the other. What that means is I can't give my listing agreement to Remax. Don't know why I would, but I can't. I would need the owner to agree to go with me. There is a company that just was absorbed by another company, and the seller is now with us. And he was really upset and didn't want to go to the other company. And they kept acting like, nope, nope, you have to sign this transfer form. Nope, you have to go with us. You signed an ER. And it was no, the ER was invalid the minute they dissolved that company, because that owner signed with that company, and it cannot be assigned to a new broker without the permission of the owner. Does that make sense? Great. Notices are deemed delivered when received. And I would like you to know that it's still kind of archaic, but hand delivered, faxed, or emailed. The only one I can truly prove anymore is emailed or overnight courier service. So I always recommend whatever you hand someone, follow up in an email so we can prove delivery, okay? Everything can be signed in counterpart. I would like you to know that. The only form that cannot be is the lead-based paint disclosure. All days are days, including holidays. It's a calendar day. Sunday is a day to us. I love it. People are like, well, Saturday and Sunday don't count. And I was like, on what planet? Are they not on the calendar? The owner signs and then you sign. The biggest mistake I find is that agents get so excited, right? Or stressed out. One of the emotions that are extreme, they forget to sign. So they never deliver a signed copy to their seller. Therefore, they don't have a valid contract. So do me a favor, sign, sign, sign. But Jill, this is the point where like, I have a kind of a hard time, because if I walk in not knowing the people and I'm offended by something, I might not want to have this pre-signed, right? Because I'm like kind of giving me away by the time I get to page 10, not knowing if I want them. So I'm letting them know that I'm deciding today if I have the capability of working with you and the service ability to provide you, and you're deciding if I'm a good fit for you. And that way we sign together. I leave a copy of everything they're signing blank at the listing presentation in their binder. I then immediately go home, scan it in, and email it to them with the executed copies. And you sign, and then boom, you guys have taken your first listing. Please do not shy away from getting their phone number and email here. Let's say you disappeared on me. By that, I mean you went on vacation. You were like, oh, this is a surprise vacation. I went on a cruise and I can't get a hold of you. And we have an offer coming in and I don't have your seller's contact information. Houston, we have a problem. So do me a favor and get me some seller contact information. I don't ever want to speak to your clients truly, unless it's like them wanting to give me testimonial on how amazing you are, because I know you are, but I love putting their words in writing for you. But at the end of the day, if something ever came up and there was an emergency, all joking aside, I need to be able to still make sure we can move forward fulfilling what you guaranteed you will do. Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, hearing none, that means you guys all absorbed it. You're printing out the listing contract. Jill and Dave, I expect to see you. Jesse and Georgette, make sure that you check in with your brokers and go over this listing contract. Fill out one on your own house where you live. Let us correct it with you. At the end of the day, it's all about practice. And I want you to also ask them if you can pitch them on compensation. Now, Mike and Eric, if you feel like having a good time, I'm happy to have a debate with you and script it up. But at the end of the day, like if you've never been on a listing presentation, come present to me, come present that ER to me, and let me be a seller and push back on real life experience. I promise, Jill, it will not be made up. Anybody have anything else they need today?
A listing.
A listing? Yeah, you know what you do. I hear everyone out there, I want more buyers. Yeah, we all want buyers and sellers. So a minute ago, I heard we want more buyers. Now I'm hearing, more sellers. Now we want more buyers. Take what comes your way, talk to everybody, make things possible. Monday morning, 10 a.m. in the office, mastermind, carrybacks, wraps, life of creative ways of thinking, investment opportunities for sellers. And let's get out there, talk to people and make things happen, okay? Woo woo. All right, check y'all later, my friends. Bye.
Thank you, Mandy.
Tell Jeff I said hi, Jill.